If you haven't subscribed yet, now's the time. When the channel reaches 1,000 subscribers, I'll share a surprise story I've prepared especially for you. Snow pushed sideways across the open fields as Anna Kovacs moved through the tree line with uneven steps, each breath sharp in her throat. The convoy she had traveled with had been hit only a few hours earlier, but the shock still blurred her vision. When she reached the small Allied way station marked on the patrol map, her gloves were stiff, her knees scraped, and her mind drifting between survival and disp. The farmhouse stood alone at the edge of the forest. Smoke rose weakly from its chimney. A single lantern glowed behind frosted windows. She forced herself toward it, aware that stopping would maya. Inside, Samuel Hart adjusted the damaged field radio for the third time that hour. He had served on the Eastern Front for 5 months, drafted after finally giving up on running his failing farm alone. Before the war, he had been a quiet man who preferred long work days, early mornings, and the predictable rhythm of soil and livestock. Now he handled munitions and improvised launchers because he followed instructions better than he voiced opinions. His superiors described him as reliable. His fellow soldiers described him as distant. No one knew that distance came from grief, not personality. Samuel's wife, Miriam, and their newborn daughter died from a winter infection the year before. He had buried both with his own hands, cleaned the house afterward, and lived in a silence that felt heavier than the cold in the fields. When he enlisted, he told no one why. He simply said the farm did not need him anymore. A knock struck the door, weak, uneven. He froze for a second, hand inching toward the rifle leaning against a crate. The front had been unstable for days. It could have been anyone. He opened the door only halfway. Anna stood there, pale from the cold, hair stiff with frost, one sleeve torn. She kept her voice steady despite the exhaustion. Medical volunteer. My convoy was hit. I need shelter. Samuel stepped back, letting her inside without ceremony. He closed the door firmly to keep the wind out. The room was warm compared to outside, but still dim. Crates of ammunition and supplies lined the walls. A narrow cot sat by a small stove. Everything smelled of metal, smoke, and wet wool. Anna took it in quickly, scanning the space the way all survivors do, checking corners, exits, shadows. Samuel noticed it. He recognized the look. He had worn it often in the first months of the war. He handed her a tin cup filled with hot water. She accepted it with shaking hands, trying not to spill. As she drank, the warmth spread slowly through her chest. Her breath steadied enough to let her speak. My team was escorting wounded civilians east. We hit a roadblock. Artillery followed. She stopped, swallowing hard. I don't know if anyone else made it. Samuel listened without interrupting. He didn't offer comforting words. He didn't have the kind of voice suited for them. But he cleared a chair for her and moved the radio equipment aside so she could sit. His thoughts flicked briefly to the losses he never spoke of. The quiet after those deaths had been suffocating. Looking at her now, cold and shaken but still focused, he felt an old instinct. Help the person in front of you. He pushed a small metal heater closer to her boots. You're safe here for now, he said simply. His tone was flat but not cold. Patrol will come through tomorrow. Anna nodded, pressing her hands near the heater. Her eyes traveled to the field radio. Does it work? Barely, he answered. The signal comes and goes. I'm required to keep it running. Is this place fully manned? Sometimes, he said. Right now, it's just me. She studied him more carefully. Broad shoulders, rough hands, sun-weathered skin that no winter could hide. His uniform was worn but tidy. He kept his equipment organized, almost too organized. A man who needed control because life had taken too much from him. What's your assignment? She asked. Missile operator. Improvised systems mostly. We cover this sector when armor moves through. Not much else. His answer was simple, but his eyes avoided hers. She sensed something behind it, something heavy, but she didn't press. Her own mission was straightforward. Escort, stabilize, and evacuate civilians. But the convoy was gone, leaving only her and the clothes on her back. For the first time in hours, she allowed herself to sit still. The silence inside the farmhouse was different from the silence of the woods. It felt contained, human, almost safe. Samuel returned to checking the radio, but now he kept her in his peripheral vision, making sure she didn't collapse. He didn't speak, yet he adjusted his movements so the noise wouldn't startle her, setting tools down gently, moving slowly, keeping the stove fueled. Anna noticed the care. She had worked around soldiers long enough to know the difference between routine and intention. As the snow hissed against the windows, Anna leaned back in the chair, exhaustion pulling at her body. Samuel glanced at her once, then again, as her eyes drifted shut. "Take the cot," he said quietly. She opened her eyes halfway, confused. "What about you?" "I'll stay awake." "Radio duty." She hesitated, but didn't argue. She walked to the cot and lay down, boots still on, too tired to remove them. Samuel covered her with a wool blanket, his movements careful and unintrusive. For a moment, her breathing quickened, a reflex from the ambush, but then it steadied as the warmth settled around her. Samuel returned to his place at the radio and sat in silence. He wasn't comfortable with people anymore, especially strangers. Yet her presence didn't push him into the old numbness. Instead, he felt something he hadn't felt in a long time, a quiet awareness that someone else was alive in the same room, depending on him. Outside, the snow thickened. Inside, two people who had lost more than they could explain shared the same dim space, each holding on to the small, immediate mission in front of them: survive the night. The wind eased slightly by mid-morning, leaving the farmhouse wrapped in a gray stillness that settled over the snow like a heavy blanket. Anna finished reorganizing the medical supplies and placed the last crate near the wall. Her hands had stopped trembling, but her muscles still carried the tightness of someone who had run too long without rest. She drew a slow breath and listened to the distant silence, trying to anchor herself in the room instead of the memories that kept pulling her backward. Samuel checked the radio again, fine-tuning the dials with steady fingers. The weak signal from dawn had faded, leaving only static. He watched the soundboard for a long moment, then stepped away, accepting that communication might not return until later. He glanced toward Anna, noting the steadiness in her posture compared to the night before. "You warm enough?" he asked. She nodded. "Better than yesterday." He saw truth in her answer. Her eyes were clearer, her movements more deliberate. She was recovering, slowly, despite the exhaustion pressed into her bones. The stove crackled in the corner. The faint smell of burning would fill the room. Samuel picked up an armful of split logs and carried them inside. Anna moved automatically to help, taking half the load without needing to be asked. Their coordination came naturally now, as if they had shared this space longer than a single night. After the fire strengthened, Samuel stepped outside to check the perimeter. Snow reached halfway up his boots, untouched except for the tracks left earlier. He studied the tree line with practiced caution. Nothing moved, no figures, no smoke columns, no engine noise, but he kept scanning methodically. He had learned long ago that quiet meant preparation, not safety. Anna appeared behind him, pulling her coat tighter. "Anything?" "Not yet," he said. "Front shifts are unpredictable." She followed his line of sight, her brow tightening at the empty horizon. She understood how fast the situation could change. The convoy attack had started with silence, too. They stepped back inside, closing the door against the cold. Anna resumed sorting supplies, checking each bandage roll for frost damage. Samuel returned to his tools, cleaning and adjusting the improvised missile system. It was a patchwork of parts from different units, functional but unstable. He handled it with quiet focus, tightening bolts, checking wiring, inspecting the firing mechanism twice. Anna watched him for a moment, sensing the weight behind each movement. "You've used this before?" she asked. "Once," he replied. "It worked. Is it reliable?" "No," he said honestly. "But it's what we have." Anna accepted the answer without questioning him further. She had seen enough field equipment to recognize the difference between a bad weapon and a necessary one. By midday, snow began falling again. The room dimmed as clouds thickened outside. Samuel lit a lantern near the table, the warm glow sharpening the outlines of crates, tools, and scattered supplies. Anna sat on the edge of the cot, stretching the stiffness from her legs. "You said you were alone here," she said quietly. "What happened to the rest of the team?" "Rotation changed. They were reassigned. Command didn't want to leave the post empty, so they left me." He paused. "Someone has to handle the launcher. Doesn't seem like a one-person job." "It isn't," he admitted. Their eyes met for a brief second. It was enough for Anna to understand why he hadn't told her to leave again. He needed another set of hands, even if he wasn't the type to ask for help. The tension outside grew as the afternoon approached. The air felt heavier, the silence sharper. Anna felt the familiar tightening in her chest, a warning her body gave whenever something was coming. She closed her eyes briefly, grounding herself, then returned to the supplies. Samuel noticed, but didn't mention it. He respected quiet struggles more than spoken ones. A sudden crackle burst from the radio. Samuel crossed the room quickly, adjusting the frequency. A faint voice pushed through the static, reporting troop relocation, possible armored units spotted miles west, uncertain movement patterns due to weather. The message was broken, but the meaning was clear enough. The front was shifting again. Samuel listened until the transmission dissolved back into noise. He shut off the radio to preserve power. "When do we expect them?" Anna asked, her voice steady but tense. "Could be hours. Could be tomorrow." He tightened his jaw. "But they're moving." Anna looked around the farmhouse. The crates, the stove, the windows covered in frost, and accepted that this place was no longer a shelter. It was a defensive position, and she was no longer a visitor. "What do you need me to do?" she asked. Samuel hesitated and used to someone volunteering instead of pulling away. "Help me prep the launcher. Check the stabilizers. Make sure the spare rounds are dry." Anna stood immediately. She grabbed her coat, pulled her hair back, and moved toward the equipment without waiting for further instruction. Samuel watched her for a brief moment, surprised by her resolve, then silently joined her. They worked side by side as the sky darkened, organizing ammunition, clearing the firing line, tightening clamps on the launcher stand. Neither spoke much. Their breathing and the scrape of metal were the only sounds inside the room. When they finished, Samuel stepped back, assessing their work. Anna wiped her hands on her trousers and exhaled slowly. "We're ready," she said. "For now," Samuel replied. A cold gust rattled the shutters. Anna didn't flinch this time. The farmhouse felt different than it had the day before. It was no longer a place where two strangers sought warmth. It had become a shared responsibility, a line neither of them intended to let collapse. The evening settled around them, heavy with tension but steadied by purpose. They took positions near the stove and listened to the wind outside, each preparing silently for whatever the next hours would bring. Snow piled higher against the farmhouse walls as the light faded into a cold, bluish dusk. The quiet outside stretched long enough to unsettle both of them. Anna stood near the window, her breath stilling as she scanned the tree-line. She couldn't see far. The sky was turning darker by the minute, but the silence itself felt like a warning. Samuel checked the launcher one more time, tightening the clamps by touch rather than sight. He moved with deliberate focus, making sure every bolt held firm. The stove's warmth barely reached the far corners of the room. Anna rubbed her hands together, then stepped toward Samuel. "You think they'll come before morning?" He shook his head slowly. "I don't know." Movement reports weren't clear. His eyes shifted toward the radio. "If they're close, they'll use the storm. Tanks don't need visibility as much as infantry." Anna let out a control breath. She had spent years helping the wounded, but she had never been stationed at a post that could be overrun so quickly. The responsibility pressed against her chest, but she steadied herself, reminding her mind that freezing up would only make the danger worse. The wind outside shifted. A faint, rhythmic thumping reached their ears, distant, nearly swallowed by the storm. Samuel's posture stiffened instantly. Anna recognized the sound too late, but once she did, a chill moved up her spine. "Treads," Samuel said. "Heavy ones." Anna stepped closer to the window, trying to see beyond the swirling snow. "How many?" He listened again, his eyes narrowing with focus. "At least 3, maybe 4. Her heartbeat quickened. She fought the urge to back away from the glass. "Do we stay inside?" "For now," he said. "We wait until they break the tree line. The launcher can't fire blind." Anna nodded, gripping the strap of her medical satchel. The storm made distance impossible to judge. She felt the same tight fear she had felt during the convoy attack. But this time, she wasn't a passenger. She had a role, one that Samuel depended on. Minutes dragged. The sound of the engines grew clearer, steady, and unhurried, like machines built for pushing through any resistance. Samuel opened the door just enough to step outside. Anna followed, closely, the cold biting immediately at her face. The air was thick with snow, but visibility stretched about 20 meters, enough to see the outline of the forest. Samuel scanned the trees and adjusted the launcher's angle. Anna crouched beside him, holding a lantern shielded by her coat, giving him just enough light to check the firing lever. "Don't move from my side," he said quietly. "If they see movement near the house, they'll fire without hesitation." "I won't," she answered. Another rumble echoed from the forest, louder now. The ground vibrated under their feet. Samuel exhaled slowly, steadying his nerves. He forced his thoughts to settle on what he could control: aim, timing, distance, breath. Things he had practiced in silence for months. Anna watched him, noticing the way his jaw clenched and relaxed. He wasn't panicking. He was calculating. Still, a subtle tremor lingered in his hands, the kind that came from the weight of too many memories. She placed a hand lightly on his forearm, grounding him without speaking. The first tank emerged through the trees, its silhouette huge against the dim light. Snow clung to its armor, and every rotation of its treads kicked up a spray of white powder. Two more shapes followed, then a fourth. They spread out slowly, scanning the field like predators searching for a weak point. Samuel adjusted the launcher again. "They're looking for us. They won't fire until they know where we are." Anna crouched lower, keeping the lantern hidden. Her pulse thudded in her ears. She forced her breathing into a steady rhythm, matching Samuel's movements. The lead tank stopped. Its turret rotated toward the farmhouse. Samuel's focus sharpened. He shifted his stance, bracing the launcher. "Ready," he whispered. Anna steadied the stand with both hands, anchoring it in the snow. The cold burned through her gloves, but she didn't loosen her grip. Another tank moved to flank the front one, cutting the distance between them. Samuel's eyes tracked the movement, locking onto the closest target. A sudden gust of wind cleared the air for a moment, giving them a sharp, clean view of the tank's side armor. "That's it," Samuel said, voice low. He inhaled deeply, shoulders rising as he aligned the shot. A heavy thump shook the launcher as the missile fired, tearing across the snow in a bright arc. Anna flinched at the force, but she didn't let go of the stabilizer. Samuel didn't blink. The missile slammed into the tank's hull with a violent burst of fire and metal. The machine lurched, flames spilling from its vents. Snow scattered in a wave from the blast. Anna covered her mouth, not from fear, but from the shock of seeing such destruction so close. Samuel didn't look away. He tracked the remaining tanks, readying the next round. "They're repositioning," he said. "We need to move fast." Anna loaded the next shell into the launcher without hesitation. She didn't wait for instructions. She moved as if they had practiced together for weeks. Samuel took aim again. His breathing slowed. His vision narrowed. The second tank advanced toward the farmhouse, turret lowering. "Down," Samuel ordered. Anna dropped beside him as he fired again. The missile streaked through the storm and struck the tank near its tracks. The explosion tore through the metal, sending shrapnel into the snow. The ground shook beneath them. Samuel reloaded quickly, his movements mechanical and precise. Anna wiped snow from the launcher's frame, clearing the targeting line. The third tank swung its turret toward them. "Move!" Samuel pulled Anna behind a wooden crate as a shell hit the ground several meters away, spraying dirt and ice. The blast rattled the farmhouse windows. Anna pushed herself upright, heart pounding, ears ringing. She grabbed hold of the stabilizer. "We can hit it from here." Samuel positioned himself beside her, shoulders tense, but steady. He lifted the launcher, aligning it with the tank that now loomed dangerously close. "Hold it," he said. "I'm holding." He fired. The missile shot forward, carving a line of light through the swirling snow before punching through the tank's frontal armor. Flames erupted inside the turret. The machine stalled, smoke rising into the storm-filled air. Only one tank remained, pushing through the smoke from the others. Samuel exhaled sharply, sweat gathering under his collar despite the cold. Anna's hands were numb, but she held the launcher firm. The tank advanced slowly, defiantly, as if refusing to accept the destruction around it. "We take the last one," Samuel said, voice low and resolute. Anna nodded once. They prepared the final round together. The fourth tank pushed forward through the drifting smoke, its engine grinding under the weight of snow and debris. The glow from its interior lights flickered through the narrow slits in the armor, giving it a pale, determined shape as it advanced. Samuel steadied the launcher on his shoulder while Anna held the stand firm against the shifting ground. Her gloves were soaked, her fingers numb, but she pressed down with all her strength to keep the stabilizer locked. The tank angled slightly, its turret beginning to rotate toward them. Samuel adjusted his stance, angling the launcher higher. "Hold it steady," he said, voice tense. "I've got it," Anna answered, breath visible in the icy air. Seconds stretched thin. The tank's turret clicked into place, locking them in its sights. Anna felt her pulse race, but she didn't move. She braced herself, ready for the possibility of impact. Samuel focused entirely on the firing line, blocking out every sound except the drone of the tank engine. He fired. The launcher recoiled violently, the force pushing his shoulder back. Anna steadied the base, teeth clenched, feet sinking deeper into the snow. The missile cut through the storm in a hard, fast streak. The tank reacted a fraction too late. The explosion hit dead center on the machine's upper hull, blowing open the turret. Fire roared upward, bright against the dark sky. Metal fragments scattered across the field, landing in the snow with sizzling cracks. The tank's engine sputtered once, then died completely, leaving only smoke and the low hiss of burning fuel. Samuel lowered the launcher slowly, chest rising with deep, uneven breaths. Sweat dripped from his brow despite the cold. Anna released the stand, her hands trembling from the force she had held against. She wiped her palms on her coat, steadying herself. "Are there more?" she asked quietly. Samuel scanned the tree-line, squinting through the smoke. The field fell silent except for the fading crackle of flames. No engine sounds, no movement, no shifting silhouettes. "That's all of them," he said. Anna allowed herself a long, slow breath. Her legs felt weak, but she stayed standing. The adrenaline was fading, leaving behind a deep exhaustion and a hollow ache in her arms. Samuel stepped forward a few paces, studying the burning wrecks as if waiting for one to move again. When none did, he lowered the launcher beside him. "We have to check the damage," he said, nodding toward the farmhouse. A shell hit close. They walked back toward the building together. Shards of glass covered the snow outside the window. The impact had cracked part of the wall, and smoke still drifted from the broken frame. Inside, overturned crates and scattered supplies showed how violently the blast had shaken the room. Anna crouched and picked up a broken lantern, checking for fuel leakage. Samuel cleared a path through the debris, moving with steady caution. He paused when he noticed blood on the wooden floor, a small smear near the doorway. Anna followed his eyes. "Are you hurt?" Samuel looked down at his arm, noticing a long, shallow cut beneath his sleeve. He hadn't felt it earlier through the cold and adrenaline. "Just glass," he said. Anna approached without hesitation. "Let me see." He removed his glove and rolled up the fabric. The cut was clean, but bleeding slowly. She washed her hands with melted snow, then retrieved a cloth and bandage from her satchel. As she cleaned the wound, Samuel kept his gaze fixed on the floor, accepting the sting of antiseptic without complaint. "You should have said something earlier," she muttered gently. "It didn't matter then. It matters now." He looked at her, surprised by how firmly she said it. Her hands worked quickly and precisely, but there was a softness in her expression that made him hold still, not out of discipline, but out of trust. She wrapped the bandage tightly. There, you'll be fine. Samuel flexed his arm, testing it. Thank you. Anna stood, brushing dust from her coat. We should secure the window before the cold gets in. Together, they moved a wooden cabinet against the broken frame, blocking most of the wind. Samuel hammered a loose board into place, while Anna cataloged which supplies had been damaged. Despite the destruction, they worked with a quiet rhythm that came naturally after fighting side by side. As the flames outside dimmed, the farmhouse grew silent again. Only their breathing and the crackle of the stove remained. Anna sat down slowly, the weight of the day finally pressing into her shoulders. Samuel took a seat across from her, his hands still shaking faintly. You held the launcher steady even when the turret was turning, Samuel said. His tone wasn't casual. It carried genuine respect. Anna nodded, adjusting her coat. I wasn't about to let it fall. You didn't freeze up, he added. Most people would have. She lowered her eyes briefly. I froze once already, during the convoy attack. She looked up again. I'm done doing that. Samuel said nothing, but the way he watched her made it clear he understood exactly what she meant. The tension in the room eased slowly. They both knew the tanks were gone, but the psychological weight lingered. Fear, relief, exhaustion, and the realization that they had survived something that should have killed them both. Anna stood and walked toward the stove. We should eat something, she said. Your hands are shaking. So are yours. She allowed a small breath that almost resembled a laugh. Then we both need it. Samuel nodded. I'll get the rations. As he opened the crate, the wind outside softened. The snow settled quietly over the wrecks in the field. The line had held because two strangers refused to let it break. Night settled over the field with a heavy stillness, broken only by the faint crackling of the burning wrecks outside. Inside the farmhouse, the warmth of the stove slowly pushed away the cold that had seeped through the cracked window. Samuel placed 2 metal plates on the table, each carrying a small portion of rations. Anna sat across from him, pulling her coat tighter around her shoulders as she tried to shake off the trembling in her hands. They ate quietly. The silence was not uncomfortable. It felt earned, like something solid that no longer needed to be avoided. The weight of the last hours lingered, but neither spoke until the tension in their breathing eased. Samuel finally set his plate aside. You held together, he said, voice low. Couldn't have done any of that alone. Anna looked at him, searching for anything beyond the simple words. We both held together, she said. You took out 4 tanks with a launcher held together by tape and luck. He shook his head. Wasn't luck. She knew what he meant. It was preparation, discipline, instinct, and her steadying his hands when they had started to shake. A distant engine hummed through the cold. Samuel straightened immediately, but Anna stood first, moving toward the door with controlled caution. She opened a crack. A dim convoy light cut through the snow in the far distance, moving slowly toward them. Friendly, Samuel said after listening a moment longer. They stepped outside together, watching the small Allied patrol approach the farmhouse. The vehicle slowed, tires crunching the snow, headlights sweeping across the burned tanks. Troops stepped down cautiously, rifles raised until they recognized Samuel's uniform. You two held this place? One of the soldiers asked, disbelief in his voice as he eyed the destroyed armor. Samuel nodded once. The tanks came in force. The patrol leader whistled under his breath. Command will want to report. You just bought half the sector a full day to reposition. Anna listened, her breath forming pale clouds in the air. Relief settled over her, but not the overwhelming kind, just a quiet acknowledgement that the danger had truly passed. The patrol escorted them inside, ensuring the farmhouse was secure. One soldier brought extra blankets from his jeep. Another moved crates away from the damaged wall. They spoke quickly and efficiently, rebuilding a safe perimeter around the structure. When the immediate checks were done, the patrol leader turned to Anna. We could take you back to the main support post. It's safe there now. Anna glanced at Samuel before she answered. Her chest tightened slightly. She expected him to look relieved that someone else could take over, but he didn't. He only watched her, quiet and unreadable. "And you?" she asked him. "Orders will keep me here," he said. "Someone has to maintain the position until a full team arrives." Anna looked around the farmhouse, the broken window, the scattered tools, the stove that barely kept the cold at bay. She had arrived here by chance, but leaving now felt heavier than she expected. The silence between them stretched just long enough for the patrol leader to clear his throat. "We leave in 10 minutes, he said. "Make your decisions." The soldiers stepped outside, giving them space. Anna sat on the cot, hands clasped tightly in her lap. Samuel remained standing, unsure of what to do with his hands or his voice. The uncertainty between them felt sharper than the cold. "You don't have to stay here alone," Anna said quietly. "It's my job," he answered. "At least until they bring more people." "That's not what I meant." She lifted her eyes. "I meant, you don't have to keep choosing to be alone." Samuel's breath caught, a quiet shift barely visible. He looked at the floor, then at the window, unable to let the words settle. "I'm not good company," he said. "You don't need to be," she replied. "You listened. You trusted me. You didn't give up when it got bad." She swallowed. "You don't have to go back to doing all of that alone." Samuel finally sat beside her, hands resting stiffly on his knees. The closeness startled him, but he didn't move away. He thought of the quiet mornings on his farm, the empty house, the silence he had treated like a punishment. He thought of Anna's hand on his arm during the last shot, steadying the tremor he couldn't stop. "You think staying with someone changes anything?" he asked, not challenging her, just exhausted and unsure. "Sometimes it changes everything," she said softly. The patrol horn sounded, 2 short bursts, signaling departure. Anna stood. "If I leave now, I'll end up in another camp, another team, another road. None of them will feel like this place or like what we did." Samuel rose slowly. Her words hit deeper than he expected. He looked at the patrol vehicles, then at the 4 burned tanks barely visible through the falling snow. Then he looked at her. "What do you want to do?" he asked. Anna didn't hesitate. "Stay here. Work with incoming teams. Help rebuild this place. Help you." Her voice was steady, free of fear or uncertainty. Samuel's shoulders dropped, not in defeat, but in relief he didn't understand until the moment it happened. He nodded once, slow and deliberate. "Then stay," he said, "if that's what you want." "It is." They stepped outside together as the patrol prepared to leave. The leader raised an eyebrow, but said nothing when Anna declined the transport. Samuel handed her an extra coat from the supply crate, and she slipped into it with a grateful breath. The convoy rolled away, leaving tire tracks that vanished quickly beneath the fresh snow. The farmhouse was quiet again, but not empty. Anna stood beside Samuel, watching the last of the patrol lights disappear behind the trees. He exhaled, the tension in his shoulders fading for the first time since she arrived. "We'll need to fix that window," she said. "We will," he replied. "And reinforce the wall." "We will. And find a better place for the medical supplies." "We'll do that too." He glanced at her. She smiled, not wide, just enough to show she wasn't afraid anymore. Together, they walked back toward the farmhouse. The snow fell silently, covering the field where they had stood their ground. Inside, the stove glowed warm against the frost. For the first time in a long time, neither of them felt alone.